In 2005, the global automotive industry faced an unprecedented scandal that would forever change how manufacturers viewed intellectual property protection. Chery Automobile, a relatively unknown Chinese car manufacturer founded just 8 years earlier, found itself at the center of an international firestorm for what industry experts called the most blatant and systematic case of automotive design plagiarism in modern history. The company had brazenly copied not just design elements, but entire vehicle lineups from established global brands, creating near-identical replicas that fooled even seasoned automotive journalists. This wasn't a case of subtle inspiration or coincidental similarities. This was wholesale automotive theft on an industrial scale. The scandal erupted when automotive trade publications began publishing side-by-side photographs of Chery vehicles next to their obvious source material from General Motors, Toyota, Hyundai, and other major manufacturers. The similarities were so striking that some industry observers initially assumed the images were digitally manipulated. What made this case particularly shocking was the sheer audacity of it all. Chery had essentially built their entire product lineup by reverse engineering and copying successful designs from every major automotive market, from compact cars to SUVs, creating what amounted to a greatest hits collection of stolen automotive design. Chery Automobile, officially known as Chery Automobile Company Limited, was established in 1997 in Wuhu, Anhui Province, China, during the country's rapid industrialization period, when the government was aggressively promoting domestic automotive manufacturing. The company was founded with significant backing from the Anhui provincial government and was positioned as a key player in China's strategy to develop a competitive domestic automotive industry that could eventually challenge foreign manufacturers. By 2005, Chery had grown from a startup to China's largest independent automaker, producing over 180,000 vehicles annually and exporting to more than 30 countries. The company's rapid rise was largely attributed to their ability to quickly bring new models to market at competitive prices, but the true secret behind their speed and cost-effectiveness was about to be exposed to the world. Chery's business model relied heavily on reverse engineering foreign vehicles, dismantling imported cars piece by piece, studying their design and engineering, then recreating them with minor cosmetic changes to avoid the most obvious copyright violations. This approach allowed them to skip the expensive and time-consuming research and development phase that typically accounts for billions of dollars in automotive manufacturing costs. The company marketed itself as an innovative Chinese automaker, but internal documents later revealed that their product development strategy was built almost entirely on copying existing successful designs from established manufacturers. The scandal reached its peak when automotive journalists and industry analysts began systematically documenting the extent of Chery's copying across their entire vehicle lineup. The most egregious example was the Chery QQ, which was virtually identical to General Motors' Chevrolet Spark, from the distinctive rounded headlights to the overall proportions and even interior design elements. The similarities were so pronounced that General Motors immediately launched legal action, claiming that Chery had not just copied the external design, but had also replicated proprietary engineering solutions and manufacturing techniques. The Chery A5 sedan was revealed to be an almost perfect copy of the Toyota Corolla, featuring identical body lines, similar front grille design, and remarkably similar interior layouts. The copying extended beyond passenger cars to SUVs, where the Chery Tiggo bore an unmistakable resemblance to the Toyota RAV4, complete with copied wheel designs and interior trim patterns. Industry experts noted that the level of detail in these copies suggested that Chery had access to detailed engineering drawings or had conducted extensive reverse engineering operations using sophisticated scanning and measurement equipment. The automotive press began referring to Chery's lineup as a copy catalog, where potential buyers could essentially purchase knockoff versions of popular international models at significantly reduced prices. The international automotive community's reaction was swift and unprecedented in its unity across competing manufacturers. General Motors led the charge by filing multiple lawsuits against Chery, seeking both financial damages and injunctions to prevent the sale of copied vehicles in international markets. Toyota issued strongly worded statements condemning what they called industrial piracy, and began working with trade organizations to document the extent of design theft across the industry. Hyundai joined the legal battle after discovering that their Hyundai Accent had been essentially cloned by Chery's A1 model, complete with copied dashboard layouts and seat designs. The Society of Motor Manufacturers and Traders in the United Kingdom issued a formal complaint to the World Trade Organization, arguing that Chinese manufacturers were gaining unfair competitive advantages through systematic intellectual property theft. European automotive trade associations began lobbying for stricter import regulations and enhanced intellectual property protections in trade agreements with China. The scandal also caught the attention of automotive safety regulators, who raised concerns about whether copied vehicles had undergone proper safety testing or if they had simply assumed that copying the design meant copying the safety performance. Industry publications estimated that Chery had saved approximately $500 million in research and development costs by copying existing designs instead of developing original vehicles. The legal battles that ensued revealed the complex challenges of protecting intellectual property in the global automotive market. General Motors' lawsuit against Chery became a test case for international intellectual property protection, particularly regarding the enforcement of design rights across different legal jurisdictions. The case was complicated by the fact that while the vehicles were obviously copied, Chinese intellectual property law at the time provided limited protection for automotive design elements, creating a legal gray area that Chery exploited. Court documents revealed that Chery had systematically studied vehicles from multiple manufacturers, creating detailed measurement databases and component libraries that they used as templates for their own production. The legal proceedings uncovered evidence that Chery had purchased vehicles from various manufacturers specifically for reverse engineering purposes, with internal company documents referring to these vehicles as reference units and development templates. International trade lawyers noted that the case highlighted fundamental weaknesses in global intellectual property frameworks, particularly regarding the protection of industrial design in rapidly developing markets. The World Intellectual Property Organization began studying the Chery case as an example of how existing international treaties failed to adequately address systematic design copying in the automotive sector. The legal battles dragged on for years, with Chery consistently arguing that their designs were sufficiently different from the originals to avoid copyright infringement despite overwhelming visual evidence to the contrary. The scandal had immediate and severe consequences for Chery's international expansion plans and reputation. Several European distributors canceled contracts with Chery after the copying allegations became public, citing concerns about potential legal liability and brand damage. The company's planned entry into the European Union market was indefinitely postponed as regulators increased scrutiny of Chinese automotive imports. Chery's stock price, which had been rising steadily due to their rapid growth, plummeted by over 40% in the months following the scandal's peak media coverage. International automotive trade shows began rejecting Chery's applications for exhibition space, with organizers citing concerns about displaying potentially copyright-infringing vehicles. The company's planned initial public offering was delayed indefinitely as investors expressed concerns about potential legal liabilities and the sustainability of a business model based on copying existing designs. Several countries, including members of the European Union, began implementing enhanced inspection procedures for Chinese automotive imports, specifically looking for design similarities to existing vehicles from established manufacturers. The reputational damage extended beyond Chery to other Chinese automotive manufacturers, who found themselves facing increased scrutiny and skepticism about the originality of their designs, creating what industry analysts called a credibility deficit for the entire Chinese automotive sector. The broader implications of the Chery scandal extended far beyond a single company's questionable business practices, fundamentally changing how the automotive industry approached intellectual property protection and international manufacturing partnerships. Major automotive manufacturers began implementing enhanced security measures around their design and engineering processes, including stricter controls on vehicle access for potential reverse engineering and more sophisticated methods for protecting proprietary design information. The scandal accelerated the development of international cooperation frameworks for intellectual property protection in the automotive sector, with manufacturers sharing information about potential copying and coordinating legal responses to design theft. Automotive design firms began developing new techniques for embedding unique identifying features in vehicle designs that would make copying more difficult to conceal and easier to prove in legal proceedings. The case also highlighted the economic impact of design copying on innovation in the automotive industry, with studies suggesting that systematic copying reduced incentives for original research and development by allowing companies to profit from others' investments in innovation. Industry economists calculated that the cost of developing an entirely new vehicle platform typically ranges from $1 to $6 billion, making the economic advantage gained by copying, rather than developing original designs, extremely significant. The scandal prompted discussions about whether existing international trade agreements adequately addressed intellectual property theft, and whether stronger enforcement mechanisms were needed to protect innovative manufacturers from systematic copying. The Chinese government's response to the scandal revealed the complex tensions between promoting domestic industry growth and maintaining international trade relationships. Initially, Chinese officials downplayed the significance of the copying allegations, arguing that design similarities were common in the automotive industry and that Chery had not violated any Chinese laws. However, as international pressure mounted and trade relationships became strained, the Chinese government began implementing stronger intellectual property protections, specifically for automotive design elements. The scandal occurred during a period when China was working to join major international trade organizations and improve its global economic relationships, making the Chery case particularly problematic for broader diplomatic efforts. Chinese automotive industry regulators began developing new guidelines for domestic manufacturers regarding the use of foreign vehicle designs as reference materials, though critics argued these measures were insufficient to prevent future copying. The government also launched an investigation into Chery's design processes, though the results of this investigation were never made fully public. International trade negotiations between China and major automotive manufacturing countries began including specific provisions related to automotive design protection, largely as a direct result of the Chery scandal. The case became a focal point in discussions about China's broader approach to intellectual property, with international partners arguing that systematic copying undermined fair competition and reduced incentives for innovation. The long-term impact of the Chery Automobile design plagiarism scandal fundamentally transformed the global automotive industry's approach to intellectual property protection and international competition. The case established important legal precedents for prosecuting automotive design theft across international borders and demonstrated the effectiveness of coordinated industry response to systematic copying. Major automotive manufacturers invested hundreds of millions of dollars in enhanced intellectual property protection systems, including advanced vehicle tracking, secure design databases, and international legal cooperation frameworks specifically developed in response to lessons learned from the Chery case. The scandal also accelerated the development of international standards for automotive design originality, with industry organizations creating certification processes to verify that new vehicle designs represent genuine innovation rather than copied elements from existing vehicles. Chery eventually settled most of the major lawsuits against them, paying undisclosed damages to General Motors and other manufacturers, while agreeing to modify their design processes and implement oversight procedures to prevent future copying. The company was forced to withdraw several models from international markets and invest significantly in developing original designs, fundamentally changing their business model from copying to genuine innovation. The broader Chinese automotive industry underwent a transformation partly driven by the reputational damage from the Chery scandal, with major Chinese manufacturers like BYD and Geely investing heavily in original design capabilities to distance themselves from the copying controversy. Today, the Chery case is studied in business schools and legal institutions as a definitive example of how intellectual property theft can initially provide short-term competitive advantages, but ultimately results in devastating long-term consequences for both individual companies and entire industries, serving as a cautionary tale about the true cost of choosing imitation over innovation in the global marketplace.